Welcome, everybody, to the Legacy Series, sponsored by the Sonia King Estate. The Legacy Series is our chance to acknowledge and celebrate the voices of unsung hero, a time to thank all those people who have made our world better. This is living history, and today you're going to meet 3 civil rights pioneers. My name is Sue O'Halloran. I'm a storyteller and a diversity and inclusion consultant. If you'll just give me a minute, I want to give a little historical context for what you'll be hearing today. You may remember that in 1863, a bright spot in our country's history, the Emancipation Proclamation, our first hopes that our country could live up to its highest ideals. For 12 years after, with Reconstruction, Black people voted. They entered every level of government, joined trade unions. Black literacy surged, surpassing white literacy in many of the larger cities. But those people who had had the power did not want to give it up. They wanted to reestablish white rule. And that all came to a head in 1896 with the Supreme Court decision, Plessy versus Ferguson, that said segregation was indeed legal as long as the facilities for each race were equal. After that, decades of Jim Crow down south, black codes up north, harassing people, demeaning, life-threatening laws and customs. And nowhere was that fallacy of separate but equal more clear than when it came to public education. It took all the way to 1954 for Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision to say no, separate but equal was unconstitutional and against the 14th Amendment rights of U.S. citizens. Still, resistance persisted. In Louisiana, people voted officials again and again in government, in the school board, who would not support desegregation. In fact, in one Act 496, they stated in the law that Louisiana governor could ignore any federal court mandate to desegregate. And some of the laws that even wrote it said only white people's opinion would matter when it came to school matters. But 6 years after, because of the consistent persistence and support in the Black community, the federal court's decision was upheld. And the NAACP sent out a call for applications. Who would be those brave families that would send their children into the all-white schools to desegregate them? And today you are going to meet 3 women who, as little 6-year-old girls, walked through that hate-filled mob to claim the quality education that they deserved. Today, I want you to welcome, and you get to meet, Leona Tate. You get to meet Tessie Prevost, the one surviving mother, Dorothy Prevost, and Gail Etienne. Please welcome 3 of the New Orleans 4. So excited to have you here, and that we all get to have a chance to actually have a conversation with you. When I met the women, I asked, if it's okay to use first names, but I did let Miss Dorothy know that my Irish mother would do the Irish jig, kicking her way out of the grave if she ever heard me address an elder by her first name. So I will be calling her Miss Dorothy. And welcome, ladies, so much to being here. I know you're getting stopped on the street. People are saying all kinds of things to you. We'll love to hear your reaction to being here with us. But I wonder if we could, again, a little more historical context. Ms. Dorothy, tell us a little bit about being in the Deep South in the 1950s. Get a little flavor of what Jim Crow, living under Jim Crow was like, as well as, of course, the Black support systems you had.
First of all, it was always white only. You couldn't drink at the fountains. You couldn't go to the schools, churches. And they used to say all kind of negative things about us. All day long when they pass us, they'd say something ugly. And we just lived with it. They didn't change, they just continued on. Until recently, some of them is a little better than they was, because we lived in a white and a black community. Our section in the lower ninth ward was white and black. until she went to school. And then after that, after she went to their school, they all changed. They had a guy, my husband used to stop and talk with him every evening. And Charles stopped to talk with him. And Charles was just talking. And he didn't answer. Just let him to the bed.
Yeah, so when the integration of the schools happened, you started getting ignored by neighbors
Yes.
who had been friendlier at least.
Some of them moved out of the neighborhood, sold their houses and things like that.
Yeah. So let us talk a little bit before that fateful day, November 14th, 1960, is when these women walked that line into the school. You were a couple months at another school, an all-black school. Tell us a little bit what that school was like, first grade, at the school that was farther away from home.
I was going to Horton Elementary, which was like 10 or 11 blocks that I had to walk to get there. And Tessie and I were there. And very overcrowded, very uncomfortable. I was not a happy camper at that school at all. It just seemed like we was just on top of each other. The school was so crowded, it was on a platoon session. You either go in the morning or you would go in the afternoon. And
So you went in shifts to school.
mhm.
Yeah. What about for you, Gail?
The school I went to it wasn't quite as far as the school that Tess and Leona went to. And I walked to school. It was an old wooden building. I'll never forget, it was green and white. And it was more than one story. It was really a big building, but it just was old and dilapidated. We had old books, pages missing, pages torn. It just wasn't the same. You know, we were getting a different type of education because we had to use what we had. But they had great teachers. The teacher was great. She was real nice, and it just was a difference when we went to the other school. My dad had said he wanted me to have the best education I could possibly have.
Right, so, you've got these mimeograph textbooks, it's overcrowded, you're on shifts, and there's a chance to be at a school that's a couple blocks away that is not crowded and such. And the NAACP puts out this call for applications to desegregate the school. When did you hear about the applications? How did you decide to respond?
We heard about a few days before. They telephoned us. And then they sent a telegram that she was going to be integrated in what school she was going to go to. That was before, I think she took the tests, when they said that she had to take a test before she go to McDonald 19. So I had gone with her to register for 19, but they said she couldn't come in there then. She needed to take a test. So after she went to take the test, they sent a telegram and a telephone number that she was going to McDonald 19 and what time.
Do you all remember anything about that test? First of all, 137 children applied, or their parents applied for them. Only a few were accepted. What do you remember about, of course, and the white students did not take these tests. What tests did you have to take?
It was psychological because we were only 5, so we couldn't write. We had to answer questions. I'm not sure I remember what the questions were about, but we must have talked our way through that one. All I can think. Yeah, I can remember going, but I just couldn't remember where I was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I wonder for you, Miss Dorothy, I just think as a mother myself, the idea of sending my child somewhere where people are going to be so hateful, what was the inspiration for you to do it? What were you hoping for?
When the marshals came for her, I was happy because he was from Alabama, I think. And he said, Miss Prevost, don't worry. She said, this child is in my hand. He said, anything that happened to her, it would happen to me first. He said, I have a daughter, and I don't want nothing to happen to her. And that's the same way I feel about Tessie.
Wow, so the marshal helped put you a little bit at ease.
Yes.
Do you all remember anything about that day? Were there other family, friends, members at the house? Or what happened to get you ready? What were you being told about where you were going?
I don't remember what my father and my mother told me. I'm sure he'd say something to prepare me for it, but my memory of that day doesn't start until I'm in the car and we're getting ready to turn to the corner to the school, and I see the crowds of people. So before that, I'm just a total blank. I don't remember.
You're just kind of kid getting ready. You know you're going to a new school.
In the car.
Yeah, in the car, 2 blocks away. Tessie, your grandmother kind of prepared you how?
Well, my grandmother, we prayed every morning. And that particular morning was a different prayer. I didn't realize it as a child then, but it was a different prayer. And she prayed for the students, she prayed for the school, she prayed for the teachers, and for me, of course, and the other girls that, that were going to the school. And I knew I was going to a different school, but I was not prepared at all. I don't think even our parents were prepared for what
Happening then.
What was happening.
Right. So, marshals come. You get in a car to drive for 2 blocks. I know you had a little bit of different reactions, but Leona, for you, what did you think when you pull up to this new school and there's all these people out there?
I thought a parade was coming. Because I knew a parade passed on the street, and that's what it reminded me of. I saw police holding the crowd back on horseback, and I could hear the noise. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it just sounded like being in the midst of a crowd, and I wanted to know why I had to go to school on Mardi Gras, and everybody else got to watch the parade.
Why am I going to school on Mardi Gras?
It didn't work.
And Tess, you kind of thought similarly?
I definitely did, because there was a Mardi Gras parade that passed right in front at school. And my dad and I used to go for Mardi Gras. My mother didn't care too much for Mardi Gras at all, but my dad and I would go and walk to St. Claude and Garden Street and watch the parade pass. And so that particular day, that's the exact thing I associated with, was Mardi Gras. Because it was the crowd of people, just like, you see the police on horseback and controlling the crowd. And so that's what I thought it was. I wasn't afraid at all, because I didn't feel like I was in danger.
Yeah, it didn't register all what was going on.
And then my daddy was there with me, and he told me, he said, when we get out this car, he said, take my hand and look straight ahead. He said, I'm here. You don't have to be afraid, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm here. And so I was fine. I was 6 years old. My daddy, to me, could beat Godzilla, King Kong, with hand tied behind his back, And so I wasn't afraid at all.
And Gail, you had a little bit of a different reaction.
Yeah, I was in a car with 2 federal marshals, my mama and my daddy, and I was terrified. I didn't know what the people wanted to do. I could see the crowds of people. They looked angry. They were howling and making all kinds of noises. I never forget, there was this one pregnant lady. She was out there and had a garbage can top, and somebody had a garbage can, and I don't know if they had bats, they had all kinds of things, and I'm just looking at them like, why are they acting like this to a 6-year-old trying to go to school? That's all I'm trying to do. I didn't do anybody anything, but I was scared to death. I was just looking like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But my mom and daddy was sitting right in the back seat with me, and the 2 federal marshals in the car. I was still scared.
Right. Now, Leona, you got some instructions about that car, which Gail did not follow.
Once the U.S. Marshals pulled up in front of my house, well, I had a house full of people that morning, okay? And everybody seemed to be in a jovial spirit, but when the car pulled up, it got real quiet. So I knew something was about to happen. So when the marshals came to the door, my mom and I walked to the door, and she said, when you get in that car, you sit to the back of the seat and do not put your face out of that window. So when y'all see that little girl looking out the window, that's all. I would have called a good spanking.
You were taught to stay away from that window.
Stay away from that car.
And I also wanted to say, you know, the angry white mob was in front there. It didn't necessarily register totally to all three of you, but behind, who is behind that white group?
The black crowd.
Yeah.
The black supporters, our neighborhood, our community.
Your
They were
neighborhood
there
and
also.
community.
Our supporters. They were out there for us. We just didn't see them, but they were there.
They were kept at the
They
back,
were kept at the back. Yeah.
In the rear of the school.
In the rear. Yeah.
but they were there, absolutely. Okay, so you walk into this school, you go to the principal's office, sitting down at the bench, and what happens?
Nothing.
Nothing.
For hours.
Hours. You sat there for hours.
They didn't know what to do with us.
They didn't know what to do with you.
I didn't want to do anything
But
with
that's
us.
probably a better word.
You know.
They didn't want to do
Didn't
anything
want us,
with
they
you.
didn't want us there, period.
Did they know you were coming that day? Do you think that's specific? McDonough Elementary 19 knew you were coming.
Oh, they knew.
It was
Because it was a little secret.
It was supposed to be a secret, but that crowd wouldn't have been out there if it was really a secret.
Yeah, so obviously the word got out. The word.
And my mother used to work at Horton, and she announced it. You know, it was supposed to be silent. She announced it at school, and the whole school was out. The whole school came out. The principal let them out. They all came out in front of the door.
Came out to support.
Yeah.
So there you are, hours. What did you all do while you're waiting?
Jump, hopscotch.
We played hopscotch.
You started playing.
On the tiles,
They
on the
had towels
floor.
on the floor. and
Just
we
wait.
created a hopscotch.
Yeah.
We
That's
played.
what we did.
Finally, you get to the first grade classroom. What happened then?
Everybody started leaving. Mommy and Daddy, whomever came and pulled them out one at a time, one by one. You know, Billy Bob, Janie Sue, whatever the names was, they just yanked them out the classroom. Let's go. You know, and the kids looking at their parents and, come on here, let's go.
So the parents walked right into the
And
classroom.
took them out
And yanked
one
them
by
out.
one till there was nobody left but the three of us in the entire school, not the classroom, the school.
By
This
3
is a Italian Renaissance kind of building, 35,000 square feet, and there's 3 little girls in the whole school is left.
We was confined to just a small portion of that building for security reasons. Our classroom, a bathroom right across the hall, and our play area, which was under a stairwell.
So out of this huge building, you had your classroom, played under the stairwell, you had the one bathroom, couldn't go to the cafeteria,
Had to
nothing.
bring everything we ate or drink with us.
Bring your own
Water
food with
fountains
you.
were turned off.
Everything,
Windows were papered up. They couldn't see in. We couldn't see out. We weren't even allowed to go on the side of the room where there was a window. We couldn't even cross a door sill without being received by a U.S. Marshal.
We couldn't go to the bathroom by ourselves. Anything.
Couldn't go to the
We couldn't do
bathroom by
nothing
yourself.
ourselves.
And so the windows are covered, you could still hear people out there?
I don't remember here.
It's like we tuned it out when we got inside. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we could, but
And what did the teacher do as parents are coming and dragging their kids?
no.
Nothing. What they gonna do?
We'll do
She
that.
just continued with her class work.
Like nothing.
Ain't
Continue
nothing happened.
teaching.
And is that the same teacher then you had for first grade?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
Mrs. Myers.
So you had actual school, you did your lessons.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
But it was the 3 of you.
Yeah.
Good classmates. You had some
Yeah.
good classmates.
That's when we made that bond for life.
Yes. I have to say, being with you all, it's been so fun for all kinds of reasons, but it's almost like you have your own little secret language. I can see the way you pass little nuances to each other. It's very fun. I'm sure you bonded. So that was from November through first grade and then second grade. Same thing. Oh, and then this is interesting. All the other teachers still came to
Were in their
school.
class. They were ordered to come to school. They got a telegram saying that if they didn't report, they wouldn't have a job.
So they had no classes.
Nope.
That was an easy
No
school year for them.
And we only interacted with the teacher we had.
One teacher we had.
Nobody
Wow.
else came to talk to us.
Wow. Okay. Now, that of course was not the end of it. What happened at McDonough Elementary 19 in some ways was easier because it was the 3 of you, you had protection. What happened in 3rd grade?
After the Christmas holiday in 2nd grade, we got 25 other students at McDonough 19. And there were only 2 of the white. So McDonough 19 had become a black school. They transferred us in 3rd grade to Sims to keep us in a white school. That's where we faced integration. We didn't have the marshals or the police protection because the marshals brought us to school and brought us home, but the New Orleans Police Department guarded our homes at night. And we didn't have that anymore.
So in
So
3rd
we-
grade, you're at TJ Sims,
Right.
and now there's no marshals.
We endured a lot.
You're on your own.
And the students didn't leave. So,
They were crazy.
it was
Full school, full of students.
full of students and filled with hate. It was just a devastating experience. I've never experienced anything like that in my life, ever, after that. It was just terrible. And the teachers were as terrible as the students were. They encouraged the students to do things to us. I mean, they spitting out food, tear her clothes off, and got hit with a bat. And it was just, and nothing was done. Nothing.
And as I understand it, like each class would get integrated as you moved up. So it wasn't like the whole school would get integrated, it'd be whatever grade you were in. So it took you going all the way through the system for the school to get integrated. So even though there were some other black students came after you, there was still majority white. So you all were in the minority integrating the school.
Right.
How did you survive? Did you find each other in the midst of that? Were you still in the same class?
Yeah.
Found each other in recess?
At recess time, we went, we had like a ficus tree, a small tree, and all of us would go underneath the tree at break time and just gather there until break was over. We got together, stayed underneath the tree, and when break was over, we went back to the class. That was our safe spot. Yeah, together.
Pass and call us names.
All kind of names and
It
whatever.
was horrible.
And again, no teachers are standing up for you. There was
They didn't
no
care. They didn't
anti-bullying
want us there.
classes back then.
They didn't want us there either.
They didn't want you there. How did you feel knowing, what did you hear from Tessie when she couldn't come home from school? Did you know how bad it was at Sims?
She never did mention much to me that she was going through with. She talked to the dog, the little puppy, and he would just stay there and he would just wag his little tail. And everywhere she would go, he would follow her. But her aunt, my husband's aunt at least, used to work for one of the teachers. I forgot what her name was.
Ms. Johnson.
And she called her up, and she was talking to her. She said that Tessie was her niece. She said, and I bet you better not do what you was doing before, and you better tell all the other teachers. She said, unless I'm coming out there. And she knew her. So they kind of straightened up a little bit, but it wasn't that much.
And as I remember you talking about yesterday, you had to fight back sometime. You couldn't just keep getting pushed around
As we got older.
as you got older.
Yeah, and the older kids that were there when we were younger, their siblings was there, and the older kids were leaving. So Leona had left by then, and Tess and I decided we were gonna fight back as best we could. I mean, it wasn't a whole bunch of fighting back, pushing them on down the sliding board and stuff like they used to do us. But we call ourselves like standing up for one another, and that's what we did. We attempted to protect ourselves to some type of a degree.
I could remember with Tessie, by being the tallest one in the class, when they line up our size, she always would be in the back. And they had a little boy in the front of her. He used to, when they go up the stairs, he would kick at her. And she told me, she said, Mama, I got a little boy every day. He kicks at me. And she said, Mr. Stret, that was the principal, said, Mr. Stret don't even say nothing. So I told her, I said, well, next time he kick at you, grab his foot. And that'll stop him. So when she did that, she grabbed his foot, and he fell. And he went to Mr. Stret. Mr. Stret said, well, how she did to grab your foot? He was crying. Why she grabbed his foot? And he was telling a big story. He said that, I know, you must have kicked at her. But every time something happened at the school, they would call me. I don't know why Mr. Stretton used to call me. And this one here needed some more money for milk. I said, pay for it. But everything would happen, he wouldn't call the parent, he called me. And he didn't want my husband to come out there.
My daddy used to,
Mama either.
I would, every time something would happen, I would go home and complain about it. My dad would like to write notes. He would write letters to the Mr. Streck and telling him what had happened. And it was nothing. He just was wasting his time inking paper, you know, because Mr. Streck didn't do anything, but he was constantly, that was his way. You know, he gonna try to talk things over and see if he could smooth it out. And it didn't do any good. It didn't do any good. So
Had your parents said something to you? Did you get any of those kind of talks about you need to be a model, or just ignore him, don't fight back? Or was there a time they said,
Our
take
parents?
a stand? Yeah.
oh, my dad used to tell me, everybody is watching you. Watch what you do. Everybody sees everything that you do. You can't be like this. You have to be this way, monkey. You know, so
And that's the things that really got overwhelming for us.
Yeah.
Because we just had to be on that straight up and down all the time. And
everyone's watching
And
you.
then there was this brainwashing tactic where they told us that if we did anything to get in trouble and we got 3 black dots on our record, we would be put out of school forever. So that was always in the back of our mind until we realized that wasn't true, you know.
And then one day, Leon and I got in trouble. You tell them, Leon.
Come on, Dish. Tell us.
We were sitting under the tree and a little white girl passed and she hit me on the head, and when she hit me, my head hit the back of the tree. But I knew I couldn't fight her. Well, I wasn't supposed to fight her. So Gail and I wrote our letter, and we signed our names and put it in her desk. We had a few choice words in the letter. So we got suspended. But our parents went to the NAACP office, so we was back in school the next day. And the principal said they spelled every word correctly.
What age were you then?
Probably 8. We were in,
Yeah.
about 8. Mhm.
Tell us about your parents. Did they get any repercussions? As you said, in your neighborhood there was some friendliness a little bit, but once you kids became the kids integrated to schools, you got pushback. What about, like, did it threaten your parents' jobs, or?
My dad and Tessie's dad worked at the post office together. And one day my dad said there was a note on the bulletin board around the time clock asking who was the father. They didn't know it was 2. Who was the father of one of the little girls that desegregated to schools, integrated to schools rather. And they were standing around and they had all these white guys around my dad and Tessie's dad. And then they had the black guys, the postal workers were standing around them, and they whispered to my dad and Tessie's dad, "We got y'all back." Because they didn't know what was going to happen. They only thought it was one father that was there, but it was 2 fathers, and they wanted to know who the father was. And nobody said anything, but the black guys, they whispered, "We got y'all back."
Yeah, we got your back. And that support really does mean everything.
It does, it does.
It does.
And what happened now when you went to middle school and on to high school? Tell us some of your other school experiences. You all kept breaking ground. At a certain point, Tessie, you were like to you folks, "I have had enough."
Yeah. After 6th grade, I just had enough. I had this fight with this girl, and
Friday, that Monday.
I think it was a Friday. That Monday, went to school, and the principal called me to the office and told me that I had to bring my parent to school the next day. And when I went to the office, she was in the office with one of her parents, her daddy, I think it was. And her face was purple, blue, black, purple. And I told my mama I didn't realize I had that in me. You know, that I had enough. You know, I didn't, that's the last fight I've had in my life. And I told her, I can't do this anymore, because I really didn't realize just how much anger and, you know, that was built up in me and came out. And I was like, I cried when I saw her. I really did, because I didn't realize, you know, what had happened. And I was like, I've had enough of this. I don't want to do this.
What happened, the
So-
parent used to always tell this little girl, there's Tessie, get out there and beat her. Get out there and fight. She said, Mama, I can't fight Tessie. Tessie can fight. I'm tired, I can't fight. So that's how Tessie beat her up that Friday. And that Saturday, that Monday, she brought her parent and saw that she was all beat up. Not
Yeah, so
necessarily.
again, that's white girl is being taught by her parents to
Yes.
go beat you up. And as you said yesterday, you were like, I don't want to be that person. And you keep me in this situation. I got to fight.
I just think that I would not be the person I am today if I would have, you know, I mean, they did well, really. Because, you know, you all continued
Through
with
it, yeah.
But I couldn't do
How did it feel for you to be back in an all-black school?
it. Like a room without a roof. You
A
know?
room without a roof.
Free.
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 I can imagine. You could breathe again.
I had my 7th grade homeroom teacher. She used to tell me I was like a horse that had been locked up in a barn, and somebody opened the door, and I got out, and and that's just how it was, because I had all this in me. I didn't know, you know, how to release it, what to do with it,
Yeah.
and so she called my mother to come to school because I was cutting up, and my mama was pregnant with my sister. And she said, when my mother came to school, she said, okay, because I was the only child. Okay, I see this is one thing. I see what's wrong with her. Then she found out about the school where I had come from. And so she was like, okay, I know how to handle this now. So my mama gave her permission to whip me whenever she saw that I, you know, was acting up. And she took advantage of it, but she straightened me out. she took advantage of it, but she told me, I'm gonna make a lady out you.
And for you, Leona and Gail, tell us a little bit about the other schools that you went to then. You kept being in integrated situations.
I went to Fredericks with Tessie from 7th to 9th, but then I met back up with Leona at high school.
At Nichols in high school.
So Frederick was different from what we were used to being in. So I didn't have that problem. You know, I think I might have been the quietest one in the group. You know, so, and I definitely wasn't violent. You know, so I wasn't fighting nobody. That's how they beat me up at the school. You know, so I didn't have that experience like that. And we used to catch the bus to school, you know, the city bus to school.
Right.
So I didn't have a problem from 7th to 9th grade. It was when we went to high school, you know.
Leona, do you want to say anything before 9th grade, or you want to go right into high school?
Well, I went to Joseph Cone, and it was a white school, and it was always that division. You know, it was fighting, a lot of fighting. But senior high school was horrific. It was Nichols, and the mascot was Rebels, and they honored a Confederate flag. And they wanted us to honor that too. And we wouldn't do that. So it was always fighting at that school. It was always a war. That's exactly what it was, a war. And we requested that the mascot be changed. So that caused a lot of white flight, and it caused a lot of fighting. And I remember going in school one morning, and we would always start out in the cafeteria, and I opened the cafeteria doors, and all I could see was chairs flying. The whole room was fighting, and I tried to back out of the room, and here come the police on horseback inside the building, and it was horrific. But the mascot got changed in our junior year.
Teachers was fighting too. It wasn't just the students.
Yeah, the teachers
Oh,
as
yeah.
well as the
Oh, yeah.
students were
Yeah,
fighting.
teachers as
I
well
don't know
as
if
the
they was
students.
fighting to try to stop them from fighting, but I know they got a few licks out of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, he did.
It was
You know,
horrific. Yeah.
And then one of our classmates got shot, you know, and a guy took him, he went home and got the gun, came back and shot him. And then the next day his family sent him out of town. You know, so it was crazy.
He was
That's
never
when that-
prosecuted.
you know, that's when that riot started in the cafeteria, was the day after he got shot. It was horrible. It really was. No, nothing happened to him. You know, and it's fortunate that Jews, right? When the Jews Miles, he survived. Jews Camille, yeah, he survived.
Yeah.
He did. You know, so it was definitely crazy at Nichols.
And I just want to make a note as we're talking about this. I know some people have heard, for the New Orleans integration, heard the story of Ruby Bridges. I think some of us know of that story. So while you were going to McDonough Elementary 19 on that November 14th day in the lower ninth, she was going to Franz School in the upper ninth, right? And you know, we as storytellers, we know this. You find one character, get the audience to relate to the one character, which, you know, makes sense in our celebrity culture and all that. But we love telling this fuller story to remember that there were so many people and organizations. That's why it's called the Civil Rights Movement. We love Rosa Parks, but there were people sitting, you know, refusing to sit in the back of the bus before her, 15-year-old girl. We love Dr. King, my gosh. But he worked with all kinds of organizations and churches. That's why it's a movement. It's all kinds of people. So to tell this fuller story that on November 14th, there were 4 girls integrating schools, you 3 at McDonough, her at Franz, and then that you continued at different stages going into the next school or the next school to integrate it. And that, you know, so many people, we've forgotten this history. It gets just pushed under of how big of a deal. We know there's young people don't even believe this happened.
Right.
She didn't have the
They think
experience
we're
that
dead.
we had. What you saying?
They think we're dead. They
Yeah,
think
they
it
think
was
we
that
dead.
long ago.
And she didn't have the experience that we had. She didn't go through what we did. They didn't take the kids out of school.
And the reason it was 2 schools, because schools were by districts. We had to go to the school that was in our
District.
district. And she lived in another district. Now,
Yes.
when I left them in 3rd grade, I joined her in 4th grade.
That's right. You joined Ruby in 3rd grade.
In 4th
Fourth.
grade.
4th grade, yeah. Yeah.
And she
Absolutely.
wasn't supposed to be by herself. I mean, it's not like they say 3 of y'all going and we're going to send you by yourself. Another girl was supposed to be with her. But I think it was the night before, huh? She
They
backed
wouldn't
up.
they wouldn't take her.
She
to-
didn't have a father.
She didn't have a dad in the house.
In the house.
She didn't have a dad, so they pulled her out of the program. So there really were 5 of you that got accepted out of that 137 applicants, right? Again, this
No
full-
boys.
No boys.
No
They
boys.
wouldn't have a
Didn't
father.
pass the psychological test.
No.
That's not why. That's not why.
That wasn't the
That's
case.
not the reason why. No. You didn't want
Well,
that.
let's jump ahead a little bit. The McDonough Elementary, where you all first integrated the New Orleans school system, closed down in 2004, and along comes Katrina, 2005, devastating the 9th Ward. I was down there afterwards. I'd never seen anything. It looked like a whole other planet. And you decide to look around a little bit, and there's McDonough Elementary. And what did you think when you saw it, Leona?
That something could be done with that building. It seemed viable that something could be done. My first action was to try to get it reopened as a school again. But schools now are required to be on 3 acres of land, and that's only on 1.8, but it's 3 stories high. I never found that in writing, but that's what they were telling me. Yeah. So everybody that I talked to about it kept saying, nothing's coming back to the lower 9th Ward. Nobody's coming back. I said, well, if we don't put something here for them to come back to, they're never going to be able to come back.
That's right. So you kept persevering, and you had this dream of getting on the historical registry. How did that work?
It went fine. I don't know. I guess God was with me during them days. I had to make a couple presentations to the school board, and believe it or not, they knew nothing about the history of that building. So they accepted what I was saying and decided to do some more assessments. So that gave us time to get things in order. So I went to Baton Rouge and did a presentation and had it put on the National Historic Registry because I didn't want them to tear it down. And that started the ball rolling. You know, I bought it in January 31st of 2020, and it's now going to be the Tate.
Wait, yeah, wait, I gotta do this announcement. You got the building.
Uh-huh.
You said to your friends, if I ever get a hold of that building, I'm gonna name it after us. And you all thought, ha, ha, ha.
Crazy.
Crazy.
You know, that would always be the conversation between us. You know, we was just so sentimental about McDonald 19. You know, like, we were comfortable there. You know, so, and I would always say, oh, I'm gonna get that building, and we laugh about it because we really thought it was just a joke.
That's when we created
So
our
she-
bond. That's
Yeah,
when we
you
our
created the
bond.
bond. So
Yeah.
even though it was obviously very historic, totally crazy if Marshall's bringing you to school, you were at least left alone. You weren't attacked there. Or was it the other schools you were attacked? So you had some sentimentality. You knew the historic value, even if the school board and everybody else had seemed to forget about it. So you buy the building and you name it the
Tate.
ATN
Prevost.
Interpretive Center.
I love that. So it gets named finally after the three of you. And of course, your name's on that too at the Prevost, of course. Tell us now, you've been able to renovate, fix up the building some. What is the TEP Center becoming?
Well, it's a $16.2 million project that's been done. It's going to be an interpretive center. It's going to, well, we have renderings up, but it's going to show vision of what we went through in filming of what we went through to integrate the school. I want them to be able to see it and not just hear it from my voice. It's also workshops. It's going to be a multiple thing. And we have 25 affordable units for 55 or older. We have partnered with People's Institute that is going to come in and do a communiversity from kindergarten to high school doing undoing racism workshops. Yeah. And,
So I love it. So from giving the people the experience of what we went through, making sure this history stays alive, the anti-racism workshops, 25 affordable senior housing apartments. I mean, you have made this rise from the ashes for sure. I applaud you.
Thank you. And it's open to anyone that wants to come visit.
It's open for visitors for
And you
sure.
will tour the building just as we went into the building.
Yeah. Let us talk a little about 2010 when you had a ceremony to commemorate getting this building back. What was that ceremony like? Who was there? Who did you also get to celebrate?
That was our 50-year anniversary. And we were reunited with
The Marshalls.
the U.S. Marshals that we hadn't seen
After
in
50 years.
You know, we had a private dinner that Friday night at Dookie Chase, and a lot of people probably know Dookie Chase. And it's like when we entered the door, we knew who they were. We recognized them, you know. That was a wonderful weekend.
It really was.
And the marshal that was the lead marshal when we went to school, he passed on like a year and a half after that. And his wife brought his ashes. So we poured his ashes, some of his ashes, we kept some.
Because we have some.
And in front of the building, so we'll have a memorial site for Al Butler. Is his name.
So it was the marshal, some of his ashes got laid to rest at the TEP Center as a way to commemorate. And this was a person, one of them, put your mind at ease a little bit. Did you still feel that connection when you met up again 50 years later?
Yes, certainly was. I was delighted to see them because each one of them had a boyfriend. Each one of them, the marshal,
Each were their boyfriends.
their boyfriend, and they marched them in just like they did when the first day of school, and they walked up the steps with them. But I was delighted. I was at ease. Well, everything was over.
Safe, everybody was
Yeah.
safe. And you had some contact over the years with some of those folks, yes?
Well, they used to send mail and until the NAACP censored it, but they used to send all kind of filthy stuff
Yeah.
in the mail, wasting money, I guess, with them. And ambulance, dead wagons, all kind of stuff like that. Hearses, yes,
Birds too.
everything.
Hate mail and
Hate mail,
all
yeah.
Hate
kinds-
mail for one.
Yeah.
But we survived, and I got letters from all over.
Tell us about the good letters.
Even though they were censored. I got a letter from Roosevelt and his wife, and Kennedy, and we were fortunate to go to D.C. at that time. I think Tessie was 7, and we saw Johnson, because he had took Kennedy place. And we also went to see his stall, his marshal, what you call that? His Johnson. Well, we went to see his ranch. That's what it was. And we was excited to see all his clothes and what all he did in that thing. So that was the 3 that was really getting in touch with us. But the Bushes, I didn't have anything to do with the Bushes. So they didn't have anything to do with me. The Bushes. And 45, 45.
So there was some contact with some of the Marshall family, though, too. Did you tell me they sent presents, or you had something go back and forth a little bit over the years?
Around the holidays, they would send like
Same thing.
Turkey,
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 ham.
We got stuff from
Yeah.
all over the world.
Yeah,
Look.
we
Yeah, we
Oh,
did.
Lord.
So those Marshalls stayed in touch with you.
It's like, when we went 2010, it was like we just had never been separated. We just connected.
still had that
right?
connection.
Yeah, I still had that
And I
connection.
still talk to Al's wife. In fact, she was on my board. At one
So
point.
Al's wife, one of the Marshalls, was on your board. Wonderful.
Now, see, the only thing about that, though, Tessie's Marshall, Herschel, he was alive, and Al Leona's Marshall was alive. My Marshall, Warren, was the youngest one. He was my boyfriend, and he had died. So he didn't come out and get a chance to get back with him.
You didn't get to commemorate him the
I
same
didn't.
way.
But I thought about him.
I'm sure. I'm sure that you did. I am so sure that you did.
We had a little puppy. We had a little puppy, and we had a little puppy, and he was so excited with Tessie. He loved Tessie. He'd wait on the porch, and when we knew Tessie was coming home, that little tail would be just that little tail would be wiggling. And when the marshals left, I said this. I thought that one of the marshals took him with him, took the little puppy with him, but she said he didn't. Because we went to the SPCA all over looking for him. We couldn't find him. So I said to the marshal, because he was so friendly with him, He knew him. He was waiting on him. I guess he said, "You bringing Tessie home." All right, I'm going to be waiting for you.
Again, those marshals and the police were there overnight, lights on your house to keep you safe. Again, the whole environment wasn't just get in the car with the marshals and go. They had quite a responsibility, as well as the police, in trying to keep you
Make sure
safe.
nobody don't try to do
Everywhere
Yes.
we went, we had a police car behind.
Everywhere you went, you had a police
Yeah,
car.
it was
When
no
we
more-
got up in the morning, they had big stacks of coffee cups. We had drank coffee all night.
Yeah, we couldn't go
Said,
outside.
"You have
couldn't
any
go outside and
friends?
play.
Bring them inside." He said, "Because this gun don't stop till it's empty." I felt safe. But then I had a cousin who was a policeman. He said, "See them one with the tags on their shoulder?" He said, "I'm watching them." So you don't have nothing to worry about, cuz I'm watching it. They didn't know it was you.
The marshals are watching you, and they're watching the
They
marshals.
didn't know he was my cousin when they ordered him to watch. So we was in good hands.
Yeah, we were.
And my husband, they thought he was Goliath. Oh, here come Goliath, move on the side.
Wonderful. Well, we do call this a conversation, the Sonia King series here, Legacy series. So we do want to open it up to questions. Please.
What do you teach the children in your community about your experience?
What are you teaching the children in your community about the experience you all went through?
Well, I haven't done anything really concerning what I did because I don't live in New Orleans anymore. And where I live, they don't have a clue as to what, you know, what happened or whatever. So I haven't really shared that with anybody. Maybe a neighbor across the street, maybe.
But I think it starts in the home. A child is supposed to ask what he wants. And she would ask for apple or anything. If she didn't say please, she didn't get it. And that's what we have to do with children and make them love each other. And that's where it started, in the home.
Well,
Please, thank you, no thank you, no mind. That's where it starts at.
I don't live in New Orleans anymore. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've told my story a few times at different churches in Oklahoma, and the people were surprised to see we actually have a living part of history right here in Oklahoma. But I haven't talked to many of the kids, but the ones that I have spoke to, they seem interested and they're excited to know that somebody that was a part of history is now in their state, you know, and they thank me from time to time. And whenever I'm going somewhere, I let the people at work know about it, and everybody gets excited. And I'd like to also take this opportunity right now to thank Judge Skelly Wright, Thurgood Marshall,
Yes.
and AP Turo, you know, all those they were involved in what we went through. And also right now we're being recognized after 60 plus years of almost being dead, you know. And that's because of Deirdre Meredith. She came back and she's helping getting our story out there, the whole story, not just part of the story. So I'd like to thank her for that. And
But Leona, obviously the TEP Center has a very important educational mission.
Well, that's what started me with the TEP Centers, because I visited a lot of schools in New Orleans and the kids know nothing about our history. And it's not being taught. So we're asking that, we tried it during the summertime for summer camp. We would provide transportation and the camps would come and visit. We had a smaller site before we moved into the school building. And we would do a scavenger hunt with them and let them, and it turned out real nice. They enjoyed it. And now we're trying to work with the school board to see if they can make the TEP Center be a part of the curriculum. And because they need to know the history of where they come from. You know, and half of them that live in the immediate community of the TEP Center have no clue of what happened right there in that building. And that's what we're focused on doing.
Terrific. Great. Yes?
First off, I want to say thank you for sharing your story. I feel so incredibly blessed to hear this. I would also like to ask, I've seen the videos growing up. I've seen a lot of the news clips and footage over the years. My question is, have you ever interacted with any of the white students that you grew up with? What kind of adults did they grow up into? Did they...
Have you had interactions with any of the white students now as adults?
We have been trying to reach out to find people, but it's just hard to get them. I met one person, and his brother would have been in our class at McDonald 19. He was older, I think, and he said the only thing he could remember was that his mom pulled them out of school because we had bomb threats, and that's what she told them. But so far, I haven't talked to anyone yet.
One thing I would like to mention that in my research, finding out there was a group of white parents called SOS, about 1,500 roughly, who in New Orleans at this time were fighting to have the schools stay open and stay integrated. So there were some white people who got it, you know. They didn't all pull their kids out.
It seems like every time we find somebody that was really supportive of us and is a white person, you know, it's when they die. You know, Tessie and I went to, Rosa Keller was her name, and we went to her memorial service, remember? But we had just heard about her, so we got to meet with her daughter and talk to her. But you know, it's just hard. People don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
And I feel like if we talk about it, that's what's going to work. That's
Yeah,
what's
so we
going to
say
work.
when the whole story doesn't get told, it's also the folks who are, we don't hear the things that work too, as well as the
Right.
things that aren't working, and we need that full story.
And we realized that it wasn't everybody. You know, it wasn't all the white people. You know, we do realize that. Because I have some friends that asked me today, Gail, why don't you hate all white people? I say, well, first of all, we weren't raised that way, but I have the sense to realize that it wasn't everybody. I had friends that lived across the street from me before that happened, but they were kids. And when that happened, then they moved. That wasn't them, that was their parents. When we were in school sometime, they'd want to play with us, but they would have to sneak. I had one touch my hand and be, oh, my mama told me if I touch you, I would turn black. And she was surprised that she didn't. You know, so that was a kid. You know,
Kids
those
get
kind of
taught.
things happen. Yeah, they were taught that. Now, some of them, it was in them. But I mean, for the most part, I think some of those kids were taught that. So I don't hate all white people. I have a lot of white friends. You know, so
We had one
just to
little
let
white
y'all
girl
know.
used to come by our house all the time. She wanted to stay there. But you know how my husband was, you gotta go. So her daddy used to come and get her. He used to be looking for her. She'd be hiding all over in the house, so he wouldn't, but he couldn't come in. He'd be calling on the outside for her to come out, and she wouldn't come out. She wanted to stay there with Tessie. She had gotten, so she put on Tessie dancing shoes, and she tapped all over the house. She wanted to go home with them tapping shoes. And I think Tessie gave them to her, I'm not sure. She let her go home with him, but her daddy didn't want him.
Yeah.
But she cried to take him, and he just left her.
I mean, they
went
were
on.
children.
And they had one little girl, a nurse that come to our church. She had one of her patients, and she remembered, got to talking about the integration and all that at McDonald, and she was from the Ninth Ward. And she said, oh, I remember something about the school. She said, I remember Tessie Prevost. So the girl said, oh, Tessie go to my church. You know Tessie? She said, yeah, we integrated the school. She said, Tessie used to beat me up all the time. Tessie used to beat me up all the time. She said, my mama used to make her fight Tessie. She said, but Tessie can fight. She had cancer. I don't know if she died after that. But she, every time the girl would go there, she'd talk about Tessie.
You made your Merck test. Another question. Yes, in the back.
I'm just astonished. I want to know why the protection was pulled when you moved to the other school. What changed that made them think you didn't need protection anymore?
I don't know, but
The question is, when they went from McDonough to Sims, there was no marshals or protection anymore. Why did that change?
Deirdre can answer that.
You can answer that.
Okay. Do you want to answer it, Deirdre?
Yeah, I'll answer it. So there was the transition with the presidents of John F. Kennedy coming into office. Jimmy Davis, the governor, had convinced him that desegregation was going just fine and they didn't need any more federal protection because they had it under control. He was lying. And Judge Skelly Wright had to put a restraining order against Jimmy Davis because he also took the money out of the bank and would not pay the teachers if they would teach the black students. So, you know, John F. Kennedy his administration didn't do their due diligence, and by the time they realized what happened, these girls were already under attack. You know, so that's why they didn't have the protection. It was
Yeah,
because of
the marshals even asked us for the 50th anniversary. Well, why weren't we called back? You know.
So the marshals even asked you, why weren't we called back to keep protecting you? But yes, the shenanigans go on. Right. Let's take a couple more questions, then I want to make sure people meet you. Yes. In the back?
She had a hand up.
Oh, look, there you go.
Oh, thank you. With all that you've been through, and even with this almost triumphant ending of purchasing the school, would you put your own children through the same experience?
You know, my children didn't know what I had done for a long time because I just stopped talking about it. I think all three of us was like we would talk amongst ourselves, but we wouldn't discuss it with nobody else. You know, but I just wanted them to have a normal life. You know, because I knew one day during the school year something was going to happen on TV, and they would know. You know, and that's always. I just didn't want to put them in that kind of limelight, you know. 'Cause till today, they don't want that.
I don't know if I could have did that with my kids if I had had any kids. I don't have any kids. My dad said that regardless to what we went through or what I went through or we went through, it was worth it to him. He would say he would do it all over again for a better education.
Did you feel in the end it was worth it? I mean, you let your baby out the door. I'm glad the marshal made you feel a little safer, but.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
I think about the things that's happening today if it wouldn't have happened. Say like the hidden figure. Lady send them to the moon and back. We don't know nothing about that. We don't get that, but that's because of the schools.
The improvements that have happened because of it.
Schools.
Hidden Figures, the NASA women who were instrumental in getting people to the moon. Great. Yep.
Did the Catholic Church, because as I understand the Catholic Church is still even so pretty active in New Orleans, did they do anything in support with the Black community there in New Orleans?
No. They integrated a year after us.
They integrated the year after you.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very uneven, of course, because part of the way the public schools, the kids were pulled out as they went to the private schools. So both supported segregation and desegregation. Yes?
I think Miss Leona's story of buying the school that you ladies helped integrate is one of the most inspiring things I've ever heard. So I'm really interested in what have you three been doing since then? I mean, obviously you're well-adjusted, successful ladies. I'm interested in knowing where you are now.
Well, I worked for the state with LSU Dental School for 27 years. I retired 2017, and that's what I do. I'm retired.
She does it in style, I must say.
I worked at the telephone company for 12 years till it broke up, and then I lost my job there. I worked at LSU Medical Center where Tessie did for 11 and a half years, and then I got on at the post office where my dad had been working for 40-something years. And when Katrina came, we evacuated to Oklahoma, and I got on at the post office in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I now have like 23 and a half years, and I'm planning on retiring in the near future.
If I can just say, when Gail and I met in the airport on the way here to Jonesboro, she had not been to bed yet because she had just gotten off her shift at work to fly here. So that's dedication. And of course, Miss Leona is?
I've done it all. The phone company, I don't know, it seems like all three of us was somewhere together and not even knowing it when I worked at the post office. And I was in the medical field when I decided on the building. But I just had to stop working because I couldn't focus on both. I couldn't shuffle them both. So I just stepped out on faith and I quit my job. I'm retired, but I'm working again. Okay. So.
Absolutely. In our couple final moments here, is there anything if you could say, Tessie's so lucky her mom's still with us, would you say to your parents that they made that decision back then? What would you say to them, or what would you like to hear from them about you?
I know my dad would be so proud, so excited, because this was him. My mama just was going along with the program. Because my mama would have been fighting, so my mama had to stay home a lot of time. But I'd like to thank my dad for making that decision to send me there, because my mama wouldn't have made it. And look how it's turned out. I'm so happy. I got friends for life, and I have people that I don't know that I think they're proud of me.
I know that my mother would be proud because she was a bull. I'd tell anybody if I had an ounce of courage she had, I'd be dangerous. Because she didn't talk much, but when she talked, you had better listen. And she said she paid her taxes just like everybody else. So
why shouldn't you get the education?
not
We're
get
paying
the
for that
education?
school.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, my daddy was the person that made the decision, you know, to do this. And he was diligent and a very strong voice in the movement in New Orleans. Because New Orleans served a very large part in the civil rights movement. A lot of people, you know, didn't realize and understand that. And so for this decision, I think he would be elated because that he made the right decision. He told me once that when they made a decision, they did not expect it to have the impact that it did. He said, well, they figured Louisiana, New Orleans, you know, or whatever, but not the country, not the world. You know, when my mother, she mentioned that we had gone to D.C. right after that, maybe a year after that, excuse me, went to visit the White House. And we were taking pictures like everybody else with the little iron gate fence. And standing there, and this woman came past and she said, "That's one of them." She said, that's one of those little girls. And so we looked, and my aunt was my daddy's sister, who was like, you know, I mean, she said, "Come on, let's get out of here. Let's go, you know." But it wasn't, the woman didn't say it as if she was gonna attack us or threat, but she just recognized, you know. And so like I said, my daddy said that he didn't realize that it had the impact that it did. You know, I mean, people from all over the world, you know. So he would be very, very proud, very, very happy, very supportive.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't think nobody expected it to be like it was.
No.
Nobody expected it, and here we are.
That day I had made Tessie a red and white and blue striped dress. And she had white socks on and a red ribbon. I never forget it. And that's how that lady remembered her. She said, "Look at that bow." She said, "That's one of them little girls. That's one of them."
And a red, white,
And
and blue.
I was gonna stand up there and talk with her, but my sister-in-law was afraid. She said, "Come on, girl, come on, let's go." But I would stood up there and talk with the lady, because she
Sure
seemed
you
like
would've.
she was nice, you know.
Sure you
That
would've.
she recognized Tessie, of all the people, you know, was there.
And we are so glad to be able to recognize all of you today. These stories are so important. You know, a lot of times after we have these wonderful conversations, we're left with that thought, what can I do? And of course, we gave you a simple thing to do to support the tepcenter.org. There's also a movement, just as Ruby Bridges got the highest citizens award, the Freedom Medal. We have a movement to make sure that the other part of the New Orleans Four gets the same degree of honor. And again, I just want to say we tell these stories not just for sensationalism, not just to talk about painful things, but we can't do something about something if we don't know what has already happened, right? And because the past is not over, it has filtered into our present. All those racist power structures still show up in our policies and practices, even when we don't always intend or consciously in any way intend to discriminate. Those structures can show up, and if we're not aware and skillful about analyzing that, we miss it. And so these stories are not just about the past, they're about our present, but most importantly, the kind of future that we want to create together. So thank you for leading the way.